Hey friends, Dave Paulides, Can-Am Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thank you for being here. I'm humbled, I'm grateful, I'm overwhelmed at times. This audience is just the best. Words escape me to explain how much I appreciate all of you. Honestly, when I tell you that you don't need to send me anything for my appreciation of you. But every once in a while I get something that is just overwhelming. And a couple of things came in the last week. And I never name names, but he signed the picture of Fitzpatrick, so I'm going to let you see it. The backdrop is what the video channel is. And the backdrop is also really important to Ben and I. Holding the picture of the movie he directed. I'm humbled. It's beautiful. Thank you. Another individual took an enormous effort. And I talk about Glacier National Park all the time. It's in my backyard, essentially. And that's one of the reasons we moved here, is because we love it so much. Just the utter beauty is unreal. And I still remember the first day I saw it, I said, I thought Yosemite was special. No, not till you see Glacier. Well, this person sent me this, and this is one side of what they sent. You can see it. But the other side is really unspeakable. Look at this. It's a 3D rendering of the park with the lakes and the mountains. You can kind of see. I was blown away. Thank you. And those things mean something to me. When somebody takes a lot of time like that for me, and I seriously think that I'm nobody special. And I can remember that the days that Ben and I would be somewhere and somebody would recognize both of us together. He'd go, Dad, can you believe that? I go, no. And Ben always wanted to be very humble in meeting the public. And he was. And when we did the movie and we did the premiere, I got so many compliments because he was so polite. So I appreciated that. But it bothers me immensely when people in our government aren't humbled by the people who put them in that office. It bothers me a lot. I get asked maybe once a week by somebody, hey Dave, give us a look inside your world. Meaning, you know, what are the posters you have up, or what are the signs and the statements you have up around? And that's a good question. I'm going to tell you one. This is probably the one that's closest to me when I work at my desk. And I take it to heart every day. every day. That's what it says. Today I will do what others won't, so tomorrow I can accomplish what others can't. I try to read that every day too. Why? Because if you really ever want to accomplish something significant in life, you got to do what others just won't do. There's people in my life who comment regularly that I'm working 6-7 days a week. And I give my heart and soul to this. And they can't understand it. Dave, get a life. Do something. Have some fun. One time I was watching Shark Tank. And one of the sharks said something almost very similar to that placard I just showed you. And they said, if you're a small business person and you really want to make a mark, you got to work harder than anybody you know. And you got to give it everything you have. And if I'm in an area of research and nobody's ever touched it before, I don't want people looking back and say, wow, Paulides really gave it a cheesy effort. I want them to say, hey, I gave it the best effort I could. And I mean that. So I'm working for you. And realistically, I'm working for you right now for free. Because you guys aren't paying anything for this. I'm grateful that you're willing to watch. Right now, this video is only about missing people and related topics as such. So we're in the middle of March 2022. We're getting ready to go into spring. A couple of things. As we head into springtime and people start to go to the outdoors, there's going to be hundreds of people that go missing this summer. The majority are going to be found. Some aren't going to be found. Yet with pre-planning and following the protocols I've set down in my videos, everybody should be found. Should be. Many of you have said that you've bought personal locator beacons. Every once in a while I get a contrarian viewpoint on the videos saying, oh, don't buy those, they don't work, or, well, if you do your research, these companies that sell these personal locators have stories on their sites about how they have saved hundreds, probably thousands of lives. The easiest one that I can point to right away is if you've ever watched Deadliest Catch. Every boat, every crab boat has a personal locator beacon on it. And when that thing activates, the heroes, and I'm telling you, those guys are heroes, those men and women in the Coast Guard that fly into the worst weather to save these crab fishermen in horrendous conditions. If it wasn't for a PLB, I doubt that there'd be any chance most of them would ever be found. So yeah, they work. They work really well. And there's a lot of fishermen alive today because of them. So please don't question their viability. They do work. So, again, we're heading into spring. Rivers and creeks are going to be rising. Many people make a mistake in crossing these creeks and rivers at high water. Don't do it. And a lot of people go out and watercraft early in the spring, and they aren't wearing life preservers. Wear a life preserver, please. So that's That's the start. Let's get into the letters. And there are some good ones this week. Dave, I'm a senior at pre-med at Texas Tech in Lubbock, majoring in biology, and I've been following your work since the spring of 2019. I'm also one of the fans of your news segments, since you are presenting people with information which is almost impossible to gain access these days. We're indeed going through some extremely difficult times, and I had a feeling back in 2020 when all these things started that we'd have a long, tough road ahead of us. I honestly missed 2019 and wish we could go back. I want to share a short story with you about an experience I had during the COVID lockdowns, and then describe briefly what I personally think UFOs, little people, and giants are. Sometime around mid-April 2020, I was here in Lubbock, locked up in my apartment because of restrictions. I was almost fed up. It was around 3 a.m. in the morning, and I was looking outside the window wondering, when will things get back to normal? When will we return to classes again? Will I be able to visit my mom this summer? Is there really an end to this misery? And then all of a sudden, I see an orange orb, which I initially thought is a bright star, but it was moving somewhat fast. My window was open, so if it was an airplane or helicopter, I surely would have heard the sound. I immediately grabbed my Samsung Galaxy phone and tried to zoom in and take a picture. But unfortunately, nothing came up. I immediately then called my mom and told her the entire incident, but I don't know if she believed me or not. It's to be noted that I am a practicing Muslim. Therefore, I don't drink or do drugs, since all of these are strictly prohibited in our religion. I was somewhat convinced that what I saw was indeed a UFO, and I heard about a lot of sightings here in West Texas. I also wanted to ask if there are any disappearances that occurred in West Texas, specifically around Big Bend National Park, that fit the profile. There are, but there aren't many. Secondly, I would like to present you with my own theory about the UFOs, fairies, little people, giants, etc. I want to be clear, though, that these are mere assumptions and I have no scientific evidence to back them up, and I'm open to all sorts of criticism. So let me stop there for a second. I have a very close relative that was on that pre-med route, biology, etc. It's a tough road to hoe. You got to be smart to do that. So I respect these people immensely. According to Islam, Persian, and Greek mythologies, these beings, whom we Muslims call jinns, ruled Earth before humans arrived. If you look into the Silurian hypothesis, which states that an advanced pre-human industrial civilization might have ruled Earth millions of years ago, it actually makes a little sense. So many out-of-place artifacts like the 500 million year shoe print found in the Antelope Springs of Utah, 2.8 billion year old Klerksdorp spheres from South Africa. Whoa. Excuse me, folks. And that was unexpected. And probably gross. Which is why I went off screen. So, back. 1.8 billion year old nuclear reactor in the Gabon Republic, deemed natural by the scientists, but American physicist Glenn Seaborg says it's not possible for it to be natural. Megaliths in Gornaya Shoria in Russia, also deemed natural by the academia, but if you look at the structures, they clearly look man-made, and so on. I think these pre-human civilizations were far more advanced than our own, and they might be creators or inventors of UFOs. Maybe something happened at a global level, like a cosmic impact, which not only brought an end to that civilization, but also somehow changed the frequency of our planet, thus barring these entities from existing on this plane due to differences in vibrational frequency. And differences in vibrational frequency is another reason why we can't see certain things. But sometimes when these entities somehow reach the vibrational frequency of our world, they can be visible, but only momentarily. Also, who knows, maybe they use crafts like UFOs to travel here in this world, because doing that without a craft might require a tremendous amount of energy. I also think the fact that so many people go missing in and around Grant Fields is due to the fact that these entities have some sort of weird fascination with granite. Maybe these granite fields are the remnants of their lost civilization, which over time eroded and now looks like mere natural rocks or mountains. Honestly speaking, when I look at some of the huge boulders in Yosemite, it looks like the remnants of an advanced megalithic city which eroded over millions of years ago. These are just my ideas. It might sound crazy, but I'm really fascinated with these topics and always like to think outside the box. You can go in a lot of different directions with this. I sincerely apologize for the long letter and wish you the best. Thank you for that. You know, if more people thought like this person, I think we'd get a whole heck of a lot farther on our missing person issue. Several months ago, no, it's probably been several years ago now, somebody sent me a video about some of the tunnel building materials that we have. And we can actually go through solid rock and then grind or melt the rock, line the tunnel all in one easy step. And when you think that we have the ability to do that now, what's saying that another entity can't go into the middle of these giant monolithic rocks that they have in Yosemite, and they could be living right in the middle of them? We never know, right? Okay, next email. I know you hate long emails, so I thought I'd try and keep this as short as possible. At least my point's getting across. Don't send long emails. And I should say something else. See how that email is broken up into paragraphs, easily readable? I get some that are pages long in just one paragraph. The majority of those don't get read because they're too hard to read. So if you format them, write good English, it makes it a lot easier. Hi Dave, I know you hate long emails. Okay. Premise. The genetic sequencing that has led to Homo sapiens originated from life that began in the ocean over a few million years ago and evolved into apes. Over another couple million years, humans evolved from apes. Research continues to reveal that there were several species of humans, some often living alongside of each other. So if there was a sequence of evolution that has resulted in terrestrial intelligent beings, it would be fair to surmise that intelligent beings evolved that remained in the ocean. Yes, whales and dolphins, squids, octopi. Seriously, learn how intelligent those little creatures are. But what about ocean-based equivalent to humans? Not like us physically, but like us in terms of intelligence. Maybe the unidentified objects that have been witnessed over the ocean are not from outer space, but inner space. Those intelligent beings whom have developed technology that have transported them around the ocean without detection, but are now developing that technology to visit above the ocean, like humans are trying to discover space. Let me stop. There's something called underwater submerged objects, USOs, which are essentially UFOs, but they're in the water. And they've been seen and monitored by Navy crews and submarines. One goes by them faster than they can ever believe, and they go, well, the Russians don't have that, the Chinese don't have that, we don't have that, what was that? They've been monitoring those for a long time. The technology to travel at great depths under the ocean, great speed, would translate into phenomenal speed out of the ocean due to the lack of physical resistance. I could be wrong in what I am, but I'm not a physicist. Oh, I think they exist, and I think they've been seen. Squid and octopi are extremely intelligent. Their genetic sequencing allows them to change color in an instant, making them almost invisible to the surrounding environment. Maybe the unexplained craft developed this technology as well, to be hidden. Also, maybe the huge national parks in the U.S. have been created as holding pens for other humans who have followed a different evolutionary path. Hope I don't go on your crazy list. No, not a chance. Thanks for the letter. Couple of things. If you're a religious person, if you're a science person, you should be an open-minded person either way. Open-minded meaning be open to new ideas, new discoveries in that genre that you believe. There have been a couple of individuals, I think 4 or 5, that have come out and said that the DNA sequencing that we have could not have come from random evolution. They say it's impossible based on mathematics. And they say it has to be a distinct form of intelligence that created us, and it wasn't evolution. And I read their theory, and it's strong because it's based on math. Just a thought. I'm not saying I believe or disbelieve. I'm just saying that I'll read it, I'll hold it in my brain, and I'll tell you when I find the right time. So, next letter. Dave, thank you for all you do. First, my sincere condolences on the loss of your son, Ben. Yes, you asked if anyone had received a feedback from YouTube and a rating. I've received 2 of these. One was from a Twitcher streamer who also posts to YouTube. Anyhow, I was in Custer State Park roughly in August 1995, driving the wildlife loop in a wooded park, part of the park. I needed to go to the restroom, so I got out of my car and relieved myself. There was no one around, and I had not seen anyone for a while. I was alone. With the car running and the driver's side door open, I suddenly felt like, why not just take a walk in the park and leave everything behind? This was like at least a 10-minute debate. I decided, nope, got in the car and continued to enjoy the park and the background. My mom was full-blooded German, Lutheran. I'm adopted and I've always had contact with relatives on my mother's side of the family. Thinking back, I believe the only thing that really kept me from going was her deep love of God. She would pray nightly, and I've seen her prayers answered. My sister had a stage 4 breast cancer with 18 lymph nodes that needed to be removed along with a double mastectomy. She survived. Sadly, her use of drugs has ruined the only family I have left, but I'm still grateful she did survive that. Thanks for your channel. Prayers answered. So I've told you that things have happened, and it's almost like Ben was talking to me. Angie and I thought about how to say this. I got to be careful how I say this. We're at a class, a very small class. Angie made the appointment, and we're not married, so she has a different last name. The person giving the class didn't know who I was. Just Angie and the other people in the room. And in the middle of the class, this person started to talk about a inanimate object and called it Ben. And then started to talk about Ben as it was a person during the rest of the class. And at the end, we walked outside, we got in our car, and I asked Angie, anything strike you really odd about that? She goes, yeah. She talked about Ben. Yeah. Yeah. I try not to see things that really aren't there. But I thought, that was weird. I've been told it'll happen. Maybe it did that afternoon. I don't know. Next letter. Hey Dave, I'm another person who has had aerospace electronics experience. There are far bigger experts listening out there, but in my former career, I too did ample work on numerous things currently in orbit. So I'm not a dummy either. Let me stop there. The number of smart people that watch this channel is astounding. And I appreciate each of you contributing to the show by writing in and giving your thoughts about something I say. It's really what makes the show work on this early end on the letters. And the people that write in and complain and say, dump the letters and just do the stories, I really don't want those people here. You need to leave. Because if you can't understand the reason behind the letters, you're never going to really understand the missing people issue or the missing 411 profile points. Letters are important. I listened to the letter you read speculating about Earth's minerals forming tunnel diodes, water acting as electric energy conduits, and batteries and so forth. This makes me finally want to ask our community if the following is possible, perhaps as another part of the same or similar picture. Quartz crystals, including granite, release piezoelectric charges when pressure is applied or released from the crystal. This is how a gas grill fire starter button works. A clicker bangs or rapidly squeezes and releases a small crystal, and it's enough to generate an electric arc. On a larger scale, seismic activity as earth vibrations can cause enormous arcs like lightning from granite during an eruption or an earthquake. Energy is released both when granite is placed under pressure and when the pressure is released. So I'm wondering if particularly rapid, extreme dropping of barometric pressure that comes before the storms could be enough to release this electronic energy from boulder fields and granite. Good question. This could account for bad weather immediately following some disappearances. If the rapid change in barometric pressure that happens just before such weather helped jumpstart one of these tunnel diode-related quantum wormhole events your other letter writer has described, or something like it. I have an old-fashioned, fluid-filled barometric pressure gauge that functioned normally until one rogue incoming storm drop in barometric pressure was so extreme and so fast that the fluid boiled out of the gauge all over my workbench and no longer functions. That must have been one heck of a storm. I did not even know a storm was on its way until the fluid was all over the desk and beginning to dry up when the weather turned bad. I feel one of these rare, quick, extreme changes could be enough to cause piezoelectric activity in granite. I know what some people will be thinking. Any release of electricity would be very, very slight per cubic inch of granite, on account of the change being more drawn out versus being instantaneous like a hammer impact or a gas grill fire starter. But if we can detect any measurable activity at all per cubic inch of granite due to rapid barometric pressure changes, then just imagine how many cubic inches of granite there is in these areas to add up, collect, and concentrate. All these slight changes, any effect at all, would add up to be immense if it could be focused naturally or otherwise. I've read a third of what you've written and 2/3 of what you've televised on YouTube in gaining. Has anyone ever asked about this theoretical barometric pressure-induced activity happening just before bad weather, or being a theoretically possible link in the chain of piecing all this together? Not that I know of. I, for one, am going to see if I can cause a negative pressure change inside my vacuum chamber, normally used for keeping bubbles out of the acrylic castings. That is rapid enough to detect even minuscule electric activity in any type of crystals. Thanks for your show. Well, I think that was pretty mind-bending. Yeah? Let's see what I got for you now. Hey Dave, I watched your Missing 411 Hunter show. I really enjoyed it. I spent a lot of time doing forestry work in various forests, working by myself, doing contract work for privately owned forested areas and for the Forest Service. I'd like to tell you for several unusual paranormal disappearances I've had, or paranormal experiences I've had doing work in forestry. Well, let me tell you a story about a forestry worker. This was a little logger working far northwest California. Somebody in Hoopa told me about him. In fact, it was a teacher at Hoopa High School. I said, Dave, you need to go talk to this man. I said, okay. So what happened is that they down a tree, logger. They then cut all the branches and things off a tree. They then wrap chains around it and pull it downhill. Well, this day, this guy was cleaning the side of the log with a chainsaw, and he was standing down below. Big giant tree goes down. And he said, Dave. So I went to this guy's house. It was, Dave, what I saw, I couldn't believe. And he said, this tree goes down, and I was standing in a clump of bushes really nobody could see. And the wind was blowing downhill towards me. The tree goes down. He said it's maybe a couple 100 feet from me max. And out of the bushes on the side comes running this thing, he called it. And it ran up to the top of the tree that had just fallen. And he said, like 1,000,000 miles an hour, it's going through the tree, and it stops, and it pulls out a big nest. And out of that nest, it grabbed what he thought were eggs. And he said, and it took off on a run 5 times faster than any human ever could. He's telling this story in front of his wife and older daughter. And I just let him talk. And I said, so what do you think this thing was? He looks at me and goes, I'd never seen one before. I would have never believed it, but I saw it with my own eyes. It's a Bigfoot. And he said, there's no way it knew I was there, because I was staying out of the way, but it's almost as though it was standing on the side, watching us do our work, waiting for the trees to come down to go through those tops to grab some eggs. I thought, wow. And I said, how many people have you told? He goes, about 3 or 4. So the teacher that referred you to me, that's 1 out of the 4. I told my dad, and I told my wife, and I told my daughter. I'm not telling anybody else. I said, why is that? Nobody believed me. I said, I believe you. He says, yeah, you have an open mind. But he goes, a lot of people just make fun of me. And you know, that's unfortunate. Because I'm sure there's a lot of great witnesses out there that aren't talking for the same reasons. But this guy was a forester, a logger. So here's the rest of this guy's story. He says, one was where I was driving by myself on a country road at about 1 p.m. and the whole sky turned a bright white light. The light came from overhead. There were no other cars around, nor were there any structures around. It filled the whole night sky over my car. I could see no light source. Later that night, while sleeping in my vehicle, not far from where the light occurred, I could feel something walking around my car, but could see nothing in the dark. The next morning, I looked for footprints around the car and saw none. Another occurrence happened when I was doing forestry work in Lassen County, Northern California, near Mount Lassen National Park. The deeper I went into the forested area, measuring trees on quarter-acre plots, I kept getting a dangerous message in my head saying, turn around, don't come in here, leave. I was by myself, and there were no other humans in the area. The further I went into the area, the stronger the message became. Telepathically, I asked, who are you? And I got an answer, a very unusual name. I still get goosebumps when I think about it. There was another time doing work in the San Bernardino National Forest, and I was shifting transparent images like the lady saw from the tree stand in Ohio. There were several other paranormal experiences I could share with you, most of which occurred in forested areas. If you would like to talk, like to hear more experiences, let me know. Thank you. Fascinating stuff. And if you're listening, you can write to me at missing411@yahoo.com. I'd like to hear credible stuff. And I do find this credible. And you say, well, why, Dave? Because I've looked into people's eyes and I've talked to them about their own occurrences. And this isn't new. Folks, this is not new. This has been going on for hundreds, probably thousands of years. Next letter. Dear Mr. Paulides, I've written before and I have to say that I'm still an avid villager. Thank you so much for the time you put into your research. Its value has no number. It's just so very important. By that I mean everything you do is so important, from missing 411 and reporting on decades of hidden truths to current events that can't be found on social media. Then also talking about mental health in your son. I am so sorry. I can't even imagine your grief. However, I'm so glad that you have chosen to discuss the importance of paying attention to others and the signs we might see so we can help others. I have 6 children, now young adults, and thanks to your attention to the matter, I've had a chance at different times to discuss their feelings and thoughts about suicide. To my surprise, a couple of them had felt that way at some time in their life. It gave us that chance to talk about it and discuss what they should do if those feelings ever come back. Thank you so much. Here is the key point, folks, and I'll keep hammering this home as much as I can. Mental health is something that needs to be talked about, not put in a box and left in the next room. You need to talk about it with your family, with your kids. Because as I've stated hundreds of times, if you think that they're not talking about it, you're the one that's nuts, not them. Because they have thought about it. If you think something bad's going to come from talking about it, more good's going to come from talking about it. You need to bring it out, just like this person explained. Opening that door to conversation where there's a good chance those kids thought that could never talk to my mom and dad about it. It's important that you do. Ben and I had talked about it. I will tell you that the people that have these conversations with their kids and they find out things that maybe astound them, maybe freak them out, scare them, you need to find the path afterwards. That path can be found with NAMI. N-A-M-I. Those people have seen everything in the world. And as I've told you before, I went to a 12-week class. It helped immensely. So, get involved. Ask the questions. COVID has taken a big swath out of our younger population. And we have to do something about this. First step is just you as a parent or a relative talking about it. Okay. Got some interesting cases today. Very interesting. First case. Philip Faudi, F-A-U-D-I, senior, missing January 8th, 1899. Age was not given in any of the documents, as was pretty routine in the late 1800s, early 1900s. This happened in DeWitt, Arkansas. Mr. Faudi was a retired millionaire merchant from St. Louis. You know, and being a millionaire in 1899 is like being a billionaire today. Extremely smart, outdoorsman, avid outdoorsman, fishing, hunting, hiking. Well, on this occasion, he went with 2 friends, George Marks and John Wrinkle. They had hunted and fished dozens of times in the past. They left St. Louis and they traveled to DeWitt, and they were going to split a trip between hunting and fishing in the area of the White River. Now, give you a map to let you understand where this is. So, down here is New Orleans. This is DeWitt, Arkansas. This is the Mississippi River. This is the White River. Many, many disappearances occur within a 50-mile spread of the Mississippi River. How do I know that? From maps. And as I've told you, water related on many of these cases. So, here's an up-close version of that same map. Here's DeWitt. It's the White River. Very lush, very thick. This is the Mississippi. This is how close it is. Very close, within a half mile on spots. So, on this day, January 8th, they're hunting. And they're hunting an island on the White River. The island's 12 miles long, 8 miles wide. Big island. Well, in the early morning hours, the men decide to split up, hunt different areas. Later that afternoon, time that they agreed to meet, Faudi doesn't show up. So they wait, he doesn't show. They finally go to DeWitt, they get assistance. And they get locals. Come out and help with the search. Hundreds show up. Second day of the search, all of a sudden, the White River floods. And the island goes partially underwater. Search is off. They waited. Then they offered a $500 reward. More rains came. All of the articles for the time described the disappearance as mysterious because it was on an island. The island wasn't flooded at the time. Mr. Faudi was never found. Now, what do I find about this? First of all, it's water related. Water everywhere. It's weather related. It rained, water went up, flooded the island. You have that point of separation. They split up to hunt. Something happened. They were in the middle of nowhere. So any idea that there was some foul play, nobody believed that. And that was never really researched by any of the law enforcement that got involved. But Mr. Faudi was never found. His gun was never found. None of his clothing was found. Mysterious. Now, do you remember about 2 months ago, around January, I did a video on a man named Charles Pitts, 37 years old, missing April 10th, 1957, in Wells, Nevada. Remember that? He was riding a train. Train stopped in the middle of nowhere. He gets off the train, gets told this isn't his stop. He gets off anyhow. He disappears. As I've stated, if you back these disappearances up in a close time span within 5 or 10 years, then people in that area that are law enforcement, search and rescue, fire, don't remember those cases. But if you split them up 20, 25, 30 years, people forget. And a lot of these cases are split up like that, as is this one. Amelia Holm, 23 years old, missing November 3rd, 1920. So, 37 years later, Charles Pitts disappears. Well, she disappears from a place called Campos, Nevada. Here's the map. I'll leave the link on the Pitts case under the description of this video, or on the linked message, or on the pinned message. Mr. Pitts disappeared right here. This is the Utah-Nevada border. Train going from Salt Lake City to Reno onto Oakland. This is the route they take. Pitts disappears. Amelia Holm disappears. She disappears in an area called Campos, Nevada. Campos isn't really there now, but back then there was a little train station in the middle of Nowheresville. And right next to the train station was a little river and a bog. About the only bog I could find anywhere in that entire 40-50 mile stretch. Now, Amelia was traveling from Salt Lake City to Oakland to visit some cousins. And she was on a Western Pacific train. It stopped in Campos, just east of a place called Battle Mountain. Let me show you this. Here's Battle Mountain over here. If you can see, I'll move it up close. There's a couple branches of the same river that form this bog in here. Well, just on the north side of the bog, there was the train tracks, and that's where Amelia got off the train. There's nothing there now, essentially, but back then, there was. Not a lot, just a little. So she was about 80 miles from where Mr. Pitts disappeared. 80 miles west. So as the train stops, Amelia gets up and starts to exit the train. The conductor says, "Oh no, ma'am, this isn't your stop. You've got a long ways to go to Oakland." She says, "I'm getting off here." She pushes the man aside and leaves the train. Well, the conductor knew something was really wrong because there was nothing out here really. So they notify the train company, the sheriff in Battle Mountain, and immediately they come out, meet the train. They stop the train, and she's seen going down the tracks. Well, she disappears on November 3rd. Finally, on November 5th, they get bloodhounds out there, and they start searching that area. They search the bogs. The area around there is all desert. The only bog area is right next to where Campos is. This was described as the Great Mystery. Her father responded from Salt Lake City. 4 counties in that area responded to aid in the search. They had several hundred people search that area for 2 weeks. And Mr. Holm additionally searched that area by himself for days. This area doesn't have any, this isn't a real big mountainous area. It's more like rolling desert hills. And during the second week of the search, Mr. Holm gets contacted by his wife, and she says that the second day that Amelia was on that train, she sent her parents a postcard saying that, "I hope you come and pick me up. I'll be walking along the tracks." Now, Mrs. Holmes said that this was in her writing, her handwriting, and she believed it was sent by her daughter, but she didn't understand it at all. So the tracks have a distinct path, folks, if you've ever seen a railroad track. Especially the track from that to the desert is raised. Now, so she disappears on November 3rd. November 14th, 11 days later, some duck hunters are in that boggy area of the river. And they're walking along. And on the bank of the river, in 18 inches of water, they find Amelia face down. Now, the thought was that the reason they hadn't found her is that she had taken an eastbound freight train and hopped it when it went by. Now, it had been cold. It snowed on November 13th. And the duck hunters told the sheriff, and the sheriff told the press when he went out to see the location, that there were tracks from dozens of people around the body when they were doing the searching. There was never an adequate explanation behind why she was in the water. Some had said that maybe she fell off a 10-foot embankment of the river straight down, but there were no injuries noted on her body. If you fall down into 18 inches of water, all you have to do is pick your head up. Now, it was presumed she drowned. There was never a report from a coroner. Her dad came out, got the body. The only thing she was wearing was one wrap around her shoulders and one shoe on one foot. Nobody could explain that. She also left the train carrying a suitcase. The suitcase was never found by searchers. So you have that many searchers searching out to a radius of 5 miles, they said in the article, and she's found within a quarter of a mile of the train. Throw some logic at this, folks. This makes no sense. When you couple this with the article or the segment I did on Charles Pitts, this is the same rail line heading the same direction in the same state in an 80-mile radius. That is odd. I have never found another train incident like this in any other location in America. When I found this case, and I knew about Mr. Pitts' case, just everything went up in my head saying, well, I know this part of Nevada, and the Nevada desert has a lot of weird things in the sky. So maybe something happened that we don't understand. But they never found the rest of her clothing. They never found the rest of her other shoe. So what happened to all this? Her luggage, her clothing, her shoe, where did it all go? You have searchers, hundreds of them, searching this area. How are they going to miss that? Come on. I do get frustrated sometimes because people think, well, you know, Paulides does this, he does that. No, you just got the whole facts. I don't know what happened to Amelia. Hope she's resting in peace, though. And I can only imagine the terror that her family felt. There was one subnote in one article that said that her family was so poor that they didn't have the money to bring the body back to Salt Lake City for burial. So they actually buried her in Battle Mountain. That's lonely. Third case. Richard Knight. October 24th, 1899. The article just said he was in his early 20s. His home was in Booth Bay, Maine. And he disappeared in a place called Bemis, Maine. So, give you a map here. This is Maine. Here's Bemis up here. This is the Atlantic Ocean. And Poland Springs. Anybody know about Poland Springs? There's a water source there. Poland Springs water. Why did I bring that up? Well, Richard Knight was a steward at Poland Springs Hotel. And I found this postcard of the Poland Springs Hotel in the early 1900s. An absolutely gorgeous place. And if you look at it today online, it looks almost exactly the same, but it's now called the Poland Springs Resort. Now, the resort opened in 1794. Old place. Beautiful location. They advertise it as fishing, museum, pool, canoeing, tennis, golf. It's about 55 miles from Bemis to the hotel. 55 miles. Well, Richard Knight was hunting with a friend named Arthur Wilson. They drove into Bemis, and then they walked north to a place called Rangeley Lake. They both entered the woods together, and after a short period of time, they decided to separate. How many times have you heard this? Well, Mr. Wilson came out of the woods late that afternoon at the time that they had agreed to come out, and he waited for Richard. And he waited, and he waited. Then you start asking yourself, how long should I wait? We waited till late at night. Then he drove out to get help. The first day, they had 200 searchers on site looking for Richard. The second day, Mr. Wilson took the searchers to the spot where they split up, and they searched again from that exact spot. They even had trains from as far away as 200 miles organized so they could bring searchers to Bemis to search. His dad posted a $500 reward. For $18.99, that's a lot of money. Well, the Poland Springs Hotel sent a majority of their staff to go look. They didn't find anything. Search lasted 5 days. They found nothing. Now, fast forward to July 1900. So that was 9-10 months. Incident happened October 24th, 1899. Now we're at July 1900. That $500 reward got some people interested. Namely, a Native American from out of the area said he could find Richard. So he went in there, and a couple of days later he comes out and he has a skull. He says, "Oh, this is your son." Couple problems with the skull, and it was quickly identified as somebody too old who had teeth that were not like Richard's. So it was quickly discounted. And the Native American was made out to be a hoaxer. And it caused a lot of dissension and a lot of anger in this part of Maine. A lot. Well, then they had a psychic come forward and said he was 5 miles north of where he split up with his partner. And he was near a lake. So there's another search. Hundreds of people searched for another 3 days. Didn't find anything. So what happened? What's happening in these cases? Hunter, point of separation. Hunter's a subgroup of missing people. Hunters usually hunt off trail. So it's a hard search, not easy. And if people who are searching aren't used to being in the woods, a lot of times there could be times where they're unwilling to go into those hard locations to look. But as far as I could tell, Richard Knight was never found. Amelia Holm in Nevada, she was found, face down in 18 inches of water, presumed drowned, nearly naked, in November. It had to have been freezing weather. How'd that happen? Then you got Philip Faudi. Another hunter who vanishes off the face of the planet is never seen again in Arkansas. I can tell you that Arkansas has a lot of very, very strange things going on. In that area near the Mississippi River on the far eastern side of Arkansas has had some of the strangest. So I think I've heard so many odd things in Arkansas, nothing would surprise me. When I found Faudi's case, it didn't surprise me. Now, I got to tell you that Amelia Holm's case and Charles Pitt's case, the video you can watch, and it's listed under the pinned or the number 1 statement or comment under this video, that surprised me because it's so unusual. So will we ever solve all these? Is there one common denominator? Or are all these just random and coincidental? I think the people out there that follow me regularly understand that there's too many coincidences to this to just be happenstance and natural. And because of that, you have a keen eye for what's going on. Many of you have forwarded me cases from your area that match our profile points. And I appreciate that a lot. And I look into them. And please keep forwarding the cases. You're loved, you're appreciated, and we're building a village of valuable, valuable resources. And from reading the letters today, you can see that there's some people with super high intellect in our group, and I'm grateful for that. So friends, please comment. Please give me a thumbs up if you like the video. And make sure you are subscribed to our channel. So many people are getting unsubscribed, it's ridiculous. So, subscribe. Tell your friends, post on social media. Do something kind. Call somebody today if you think they're in mental distress. Talk to them. Tell them that they're loved and that you care about them. Other than that, I'll be back soon with another video, if God's willing, and YouTube allows me. Thanks for being here. Paulides out.